Welcome back then folks to the second build, of course, out of 10 special projects for this week in pack number 9. This time, of course, a fan favourite in the muscle car or pony car category for many people, in fact, in Gran Turismo 6. Must admit, wasn't a car I used that much. I preferred some of the more normal muscle cars, but this one, of course, was the Stielow Engineering Red Devil Camaro, a monster of a car. You can actually make it pretty damn close, and the only reason, to be honest, why it's taken me this long to do a special project of the Red Devil even, is because I could not get a second Camaro. I was waiting for so long to see it in the legendary dealership again, because the one I already had, of course, I way back did a ZL1 replica in special projects, and I didn't want to strip that one down to turn it into something else, so I waited until I saw this one again, and now we've got the Red Devil. Now, of course, there is a link down in the description to download this player's livery. A few different people have done it. This one is the one that I liked the most in terms of how accurate it looked. You will need, of course, to do the engine swap on this one in order to get that level of power. If I recall correctly, I think it might have the wide body kit as well, but you can double check that easily enough. Obviously check first, because when you download the design, it will show whether you need the wide body or not. Then as far as the actual tuning, or not the tuning, more so the build, we've got sports pads. It comes with comfort mediums, so we've upgraded those to sports hards. As far as the club sports section, I do have the sports brake discs, but you don't necessarily have to do that because I've actually upgraded it to carbon ceramics instead. So it's down to you. Depends how hardcore you want to go in terms of the brakes. We've got sports clutch and flywheel. I do have ballast purchased, but you don't... in fact, actually, no, forget that. You do need it. I was remembering wrong, thinking of a different build. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the fully customised diff. The fully customised manual transmission is the one that I've opted for here. As far as the racing stuff, we've got the air filter, intercooler, the high-end supercharger, the exhaust manifold, of course, suspension, and then as far as the extreme section, we've got the steering angle adapter, just for a bit of improved cornering, the handbrake, because again, you never know when you might want to get the tail out, and as I said, the carbon ceramics. For the ultimate section, I've opted for just slapping the carbon prop shaft on there because why not? So fairly simple in terms of what you need to do. I recall this having, I think, just a fraction more horsepower than it used to have in GT6 because I was using GT6 numbers to build this one. I think it had something like 778, 779, something like that. So I've opted to round it off to 780 because I didn't really want to restrict it and mess around with different parts and kind of ruin the purity of what I've already done. So, a hell of a lot of power, even more torque. The weight isn't too bad, even with the increase of the ballast. And we are running, as I kind of alluded to, Gran Turismo 6 numbers for reference. We've got the sports hards fitted, of course, for the suspension, 100mm, so pretty low. Not quite as low as it can go, but pretty low. We've got 3 on anti-roll, 30 and 40 for the dampers, 2.05 on the springs, just a little bit of camber, half a degree. As far as the toe, we've towed out 0.10 on the front, towed in 0.10 on the rear. As far as the diff, might seem a bit strange to some, but give it a try, see what you think. I've gone for triple 10 on that one. As far as the transmission, I've opted for a fairly simple one. You're only working with 5 gears anyway, and although this did have a fantastic top speed back in GT6, you do need to remember, of course, we're not using a tuned Red Devil. This is representing the quote-unquote stock Red Devil. So it's not quite as quick as one that I would have tuned with like 1,000 horsepower back then. So I've opted for 350 kilometers an hour, which is, let's be honest, more than enough for most tracks, especially on sports tyres. We've got 187 kilos of ballast, which is to bring us up to the Gran Turismo 6 weight of 1,632. I've opted to actually put that 45% toward the rear to get us right to that 51-49 split. Now, I don't think that's what it was in the game. So you could make it a little bit more accurate if you jump back into GT6 and check what the split was. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I'll leave that up to you. As far as the parts, of course, you can see everything that we've already fitted over here. And ultimately, it's actually, aside from the engine swap itself, a pretty straightforward build to do. Once you've put that bigger motor in, it finally allows you to get the right horsepower. And thankfully, the visual upgrades like the Chrome Delete really does set off the look for this one to be like the Red Devil. So, obviously, all that's left to do is jump out to the circuit and show you what this thing can do in action. Now, in terms of performance, certain things are a given. It's a 780 horsepower Camaro, so it's going to be quick, in a straight line. The real question was cornering, because obviously a lot of people didn't use the Red Devil as a cornering car anyway, but I did want it to at least be semi-drivable. I didn't want it to be this pure straight line machine that had awful handling that was just a gimmick. I'm glad to say, with this particular setup that I'm using, especially with those suspension and diff settings that I've opted for, it handles surprisingly nicely. It's got a real sweet handling profile for something with this much power on sports tyres, so if you do decide to use it, I think you're actually going to have a lot of fun. I could see this being, for some people, probably their favourite car out of the special projects, because not only is it good to drive now and it's very quick and potentially quite useful, maybe even in career mode, but also, crucially, I know how many people really loved the Red Devil Camaro back in the GT6 days. I could see for some people this being one of those cars where you forgot it was in the game, and then they're like, oh yeah, I used to love that thing. Kind of like the Trans-Cam Mustang and a few of those other ones as well. So obviously, I hope you enjoy the build. Check out the other special projects dropping this week. We've had a pretty strong start between the Lexus LFA Nürburgring and the Red Devil Camaro, so of course stick around for the others, and I'll see you then. But for now, thanks for watching.